Majority Whip Steve Scalise will almost certainly face obstacles in cementing his position as House Speaker. Hardline Congresswomen Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene are among nearly half a dozen members in the Republican conference who did not commit their votes to Scalise. The two have instead thrown their support behind Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan. South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace also refused to vote for Scalise. She is explaining her position to CNN's Jake Tapper yesterday evening. Let's watch.
I plan on voting for Jim Jordan on the floor. I've been very vocal about this over the last couple of days. I personally cannot, in good conscience, vote for someone who attended a white supremacist conference and compared himself to David Duke. I would be doing an enormous disservice to the voters that I represent in South Carolina if I were to do that.
Mace alleged Democrats in the House would join in voting for Jordan over Scalise, saying they trust him.
While different factions of the GOP duke it out over the next leader of the lower chamber, work in the House has come to a grinding halt. But as columnist Matt Iglesias points out in his new op-ed in Bloomberg News, Democrats could end the impasse. He took to X, writing, quote, Dems help elect a Republican speaker in exchange for some ability to force floor votes on bills with bipartisan support, even if GOP Rules Committee members don't like it. This idea put forward by Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who the Democrats have nominated for Speaker, which is would be a great deal to have in place. I don't think those of us whose views fall outside the narrow confines of the leaders of both parties, which is not just libertarians and the left, but actually tons of Americans, would certainly prefer an arrangement where you would actually have things being voted on. But right now, the party leaders can prevent it. I'm not saying it would even pass, but there won't even be votes on things that they don't want to be voted on. So a different arrangement would be terrific. Now they can't work together, so it's unlikely to be in place, but it's a shame. Yeah, well, look, since Scalise emerged as a front runner, the Democrats have taken to getting into who Scalise is and have resurfaced some of his comments about being, quote, David Duke without the baggage, and the fact that he gave a speech to a white supremacist group founded by the former KKK Grand Wizard back in 2002. And I don't know if that's the reason or whether just the lack of inability to come to consensus is the reason, but it does seem like he's on his way out. Newsmax reported just earlier this morning that Scalise is apparently planning to jump out and other people are trying to get in. So it's unclear who the new chosen one will be. This idea of Democrats crossing the aisle for some kind of consensus candidate is an interesting one because fundamentally, Republicans are going to continue to have problems within their caucus because the differences of opinion around issues like Ukraine aren't going anywhere. And as long as they maintain the ability to do a motion to vacate, even if they raise the threshold somewhat, if 4, 5, 6 Republicans can still at the end of the day pull the trigger, they can decide on some interim person without it being that much of a commitment on the part of the Freedom Caucus rebels. Meanwhile, Democrats stand to gain a lot by saying, okay, you guys are all kind of terrible to us, obviously. I don't really see what difference it makes to Democrats, whether it's Scalise or Jordan or McCarthy or any of them. Frankly, I'm not sure what difference it makes to something Republicans, what difference Jim Jordan and Steve Scalise are. Their policies are very much the same.
Sure. So
I know they don't see it that way, but
so there's a lot of gains to trade here for Democrats, which is why it's fascinating that while you do hear some of this from Hakeem Jeffries, you're not hearing anything about progressives wielding their power as a bloc and saying we're going to cross the line not for what Hakeem Jeffries wants us to do, but for what we want that is actually populist and aligned with the interests of the American people, like more specifically. So one interesting thing that's emerging is because of the Israel-Palestine conflict, there's new scrutiny on Hakeem Jeffries' role as someone who is a big supporter, a taker of AIPAC money, big supporter of Israel, says Israel is New York's 6th borough. He has been a member, a participant in super PACs that raise funds to challenge Democrats who are supportive of Palestinian rights. And now all of this is coming to a head, and it's drawing into focus, bringing into focus how unsteady the alliance between progressives and the establishment within their own party is. Apparently, I don't know if we covered it on the show yet, but Gottheimer made this remark. There was this caucus meeting in which he basically said that the couple of the Muslim congresswomen who have been supportive of Palestinian rights are guilty. He said, they're guilty of, I don't know, supporting Hamas or being terrorists and things like that. And he has been a close ally in these AIPAC, DMFI super PACs with Hakeem Jeffries. So I think there are some really interesting dynamics going on here. Kayla Lacey at The Intercept did an interesting thread on how this is unraveling. But I do wonder if this could be an opportunity for the progressives who have been so targeted by members of their own party over their support of Palestine to say this is an area where you have to lay off and stop challenging us and stop putting all the super PAC money trying to get us out of our seats, especially when before we got into office, you crowed and crowed about how it was the duty of the Democratic Party to protect incumbents. Now that we're the incumbents, the rules seem to have changed. Is this an opportunity for them to try to use leverage and protect themselves as they're increasingly vulnerable in the context of this new violence in Israel-Palestine?
Well, I know you and many other progressives, people on the left, are a little, even as the mainstream consensus that it's embarrassing what the Republicans are doing, you're a little envious of the fact that there's actually dissension going on, which is what is supposed to happen in the House. But party leaders have had such a stranglehold on power. Again, they don't even vote on things. They don't vote on anything, ever. Because the party leaders are able to block that happening. It would be great if this could return to actually being a deliberative body where votes are taken on policies instead of just this, there's either unanimity of thought, so the votes are performative, or where there's actual differences, the votes aren't going to take place because the leadership has control over it. Anyway, this dynamic is very interesting. So Jim Jordan has said, maybe this isn't true, but he said he's okay with Steve Scalise becoming the speaker, that he would actually even nominate Steve Scalise to be the speaker. But the dissenters, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Ken Buck, won't, even though Ken Buck's an exception because he doesn't support Jordan or Scalise, but the others supported Jordan over Scalise. But even though Jordan is now willing, he's going to bend the knee to Scalise, but his own bannermen won't make that tactic to use.
I do wonder if it's kind of like a placeholder person. Continuing to support Jim Jordan when Jim Jordan isn't supporting himself. They
believe in him even though he doesn't believe in himself.
Sure, maybe it is that. I should clarify what the Gottheimer remarks were because we didn't actually cover it. So in yesterday's caucus meeting, there was a conversation happening about wanting both Jewish and Muslim constituents to feel comfortable attending events to support each other, and that they had heard that Muslim clerics did not attend a vigil on Tuesday night in their district. And then from the back of the room, Gottheimer said that it's because they're guilty, that the Muslim clerics and constituents are guilty and perhaps shouldn't feel entitled to come and join in the morning events. I've seen, by the way, one particular Jewish group in D.C. has been holding, well, I think they're not in D.C., I think they did vigil events all over the place, but there was one in my neighborhood recently that I heard it reported on the radio last night, and it sounded like a really beautiful thing. And I do hope there were people there from all kinds of backgrounds just really expressing solidarity on the violence ending and showing real mutual respect for the lives of all that have been lost, regardless of religious background or national affiliation. And I do hope that comes through, as so much of the rhetoric that we're hearing from Congress is divisive and making these kind of sweeping judgments of people who are Americans and constituents in these districts. So we'll keep watching. We'll keep watching the House and give you updates when they reveal themselves. Stick around. More Rising right after this.